At 4 in the morning, the mirror in Elon Musk's bathroom gave him back a face no boardroom had ever seen. Not the face from magazine covers, not the face beside rockets, electric cars, flashing cameras, or headlines that could not decide whether to call him brilliant or impossible. This face was softer, older, and stripped of armor. His hair was uneven from sleep. His eyes were swollen from another night cut in half. And beneath the sharp line of the bathroom light, he looked less like a man who had bought time for the future and more like a boy who had never learned how to rest. He was wearing an old-fashioned pair of pajamas, the kind that looked as if they belonged in a family photograph from the 1970s. Pale stripes, a loose collar, sleeves a little too long at the wrist. Nothing expensive, nothing impressive. Just cloth, fatigue, and a man standing alone before dawn, trying to recognize himself. The house was quiet in that strange hour when even wealthy rooms feel small. Somewhere beyond the door, the world was still sleeping. Phones were silent for once. No engineers, no lawyers, no journalists, no investors. No urgent message asking him to answer, approve, decide, defend, rescue, explain, or begin again. For a few seconds, there was only water in the sink, a faint hum behind the walls, and his own breathing. That was when the thought came to him with uncomfortable clarity. If a woman ever loved him now, truly loved him, she would have to see past the money first, past the power, past the myth, past the noise. She would have to look at the man in the mirror and recognize something far less glamorous. She would have to know him by his tired soul. And that thought did not comfort him right away. It frightened him, because money had become the loudest thing in every room he entered. It arrived before he did. It spoke before he opened his mouth. It made strangers smile too quickly and enemies sharpen their knives. It made affection difficult to trust. It made silence suspicious. It made kindness complicated. The public thought wealth solved loneliness, but that morning, standing in those faded-looking pajamas, Elon felt the opposite. Wealth had built higher walls around the private part of him. It had filled his life with people and still left him wondering who could sit beside him without wanting a piece of the empire. He leaned closer to the mirror. For a moment, he did not see the adult man at all. He saw a boy in South Africa, quiet and pale, reading as if books were doors out of a house that did not know what to do with his sensitivity. He saw school corridors where he had learned that being different could make a child a target. He saw the long shadow of a father he could not emotionally outrun. He saw the early lesson that love could be unpredictable, that home could feel unsafe, and that thinking faster than others did not mean hurting less than others. Before we go further, you have to understand what he was really carrying that morning. It was not only exhaustion, it was a lifetime of being rewarded for movement. Build another company, solve another impossible problem, raise another round, launch another rocket, sleep on another factory floor, answer another crisis. Keep moving, because stopping would allow the old feelings to catch up. He had spent so long being measured by speed that the mirror felt like an accusation. It did not applaud his endurance. It did not care how many problems he had solved before breakfast. It simply returned the truth in his eyes. And at 4 in the morning, they finally did. The strange thing about ambition is that it can look like confidence from the outside and fear from the inside. People saw Elon Musk run toward impossible deadlines and called it obsession. Sometimes it was. They saw him push teams past comfort, sleep under desks, tear apart schedules, and speak about Mars as if Earth itself were only a starting line. They saw the iron will, the impatience, the appetite for risk. But what they could not always see was the old wound beneath the engine. Some men run toward greatness because standing still would make them feel everything they lost. That was the line that crossed his mind as he gripped the edge of the sink. He did not say it aloud. The room was too quiet for that. But it settled inside him like a confession. He thought of the years when the companies had almost broken him, the 2008 pressure, when Tesla and SpaceX seemed to be falling apart at the same time, the failed launches, the money running thin. The days when payroll was not an abstract number, but a room full of families depending on him. The moments when he had to choose where the last dollars would go, knowing that one wrong decision could turn every dream into ash. He had survived those years by becoming harder. Not cruel in every moment, not unfeeling, but harder in the way people become when they cannot afford to collapse. A softer man might have stayed home more. A softer man might have answered the small emotional calls before the giant industrial ones. A softer man might have been more available to wives, partners, children, friends, and family dinners that did not trend on the internet. But softness had always felt dangerous to him. The mirror showed that cost now, in the face, around the eyes, in the way his shoulders refused to drop even alone. He had spent years becoming useful to the future and less reachable in the present. That is the part of the story most people miss. A man can be surrounded by assistants, security, executives, admirers, critics, and children who carry pieces of his name, and still wonder who actually knows the quietest part of him. A man can be wanted everywhere and still not be known where it matters most. He turned off the faucet even though the water had barely been running. In the silence that followed, another memory appeared, not as a perfect recollection, but as a feeling. Mae Musk, his mother, somewhere in the background of his life, looking at him not as a headline, but as her son. She had seen the child before the companies. She had seen the hunger before the fortune. Mothers sometimes know the shape of a wound before the rest of the world gives it a name. And perhaps that was why the thought of a future wife felt so impossible and so tender. Not a woman dazzled by private jets or public victories, not someone posing beside the spectacle, not someone in love with the idea of being chosen by the most watched man in the room. He imagined instead a woman who would notice the way his voice changed after midnight. A woman who would see that his silence was not arrogance every time. Sometimes it was grief. Sometimes it was fear. Sometimes it was the old child inside him waiting to be criticized before he could be comforted. He imagined her looking at him in those ridiculous, gentle, 1970s-style pajamas and not laughing at the wrong thing. Maybe she would smile, but softly. Maybe she would say nothing at first. Maybe she would stand in the doorway and understand that the richest man in the room was not asking to be admired. He was asking to be recognized. And what happened next was small, but it would have broken something open in any ordinary man. Elon placed one hand against the mirror, not dramatically, not like a movie hero, but as if testing whether the person on the other side was still there. The glass was cool. His reflection did not move except with him. He whispered only one sentence: "Not my money." Then, after a long pause, he added the part that hurt: My soul. No one heard it. No camera captured it. No company depended on it. No headline could use it. Yet in that tiny, private sentence was a truth larger than many of his public speeches. Because for all the arguments about his legacy, all the debates about genius and ego and damage and destiny, this was the human problem under everything. Could anyone love the man after the myth had left the room? By sunrise, nothing in the outside world had changed. Factories would still need answers. Rockets would still need math. Cars would still need parts. Social media would still need feeding, defending, surviving. The people who hated him would still hate him. The people who worshipped him would still ask too much. The markets would still measure him in numbers so large they no longer sounded human. But inside that bathroom, something had shifted. Elon stepped back from the mirror and looked once more at the pajamas. They made him look strangely ordinary, almost domestic, like a husband in an old family album, like a man who had come downstairs too early to make coffee before the children woke, like someone who belonged to a home instead of an empire. That image touched something in him more deeply than he expected. He had spent so much of his life trying to prove that the future could be built by force of will. Childhood pain could be outrun. Rejection could be outworked. Fear could be engineered into fuel. Loneliness could be buried beneath missions large enough to make personal sorrow seem selfish. Mars, electric cars, tunnels, satellites, artificial intelligence, factories, launches, risk, reinvention. Always another horizon. But a horizon is not the same as a home. And perhaps that is why the mirror hurt. It did not ask what he had built. It asked who would remain when the building stopped. It did not care about the number attached to his name. It cared about the tiredness in his eyes. He thought again of the woman he had not yet met, or perhaps had met without understanding. A woman who would not be fooled by applause. A woman old enough in spirit to know that restless men often carry frightened boys inside them. A woman who would not try to compete with the rockets, the companies, or the crowd. She would simply ask the question no analyst could calculate. Are you lonely, Elon? And if she asked it at the right moment, he feared he might not be able to lie. That was the quiet terror of being truly known. It meant the defenses that had helped him survive could no longer be mistaken for strength. It meant charm would not be enough. Genius would not be enough. Money would not be enough. Even achievement, that great American altar, would not be enough. He would have to stand there as he had stood before the mirror, tired, difficult, brilliant, wounded, aging, unfinished, human. Some viewers will always see Elon Musk only through the public argument. To them, he will be a symbol, a billionaire, a disruptor, a villain, a visionary, a problem, a promise. But symbols do not wake at 4 in the morning and wonder whether anyone can love them without wanting something. Symbols do not stare into mirrors in old-fashioned pajamas, feeling the weight of every room where they were admired and still not understood. Men do. And that is the part worth remembering. Behind the rockets was a boy who wanted escape. Behind the companies was a man who feared stillness. Behind the fortune was someone wondering whether love could survive the noise around his name. He could build machines that reached toward Mars, but the hardest journey was still being seen without his armor. That is why the morning mattered. Not because it changed history in some visible way. Not because a decision was announced or a company was saved. Not because anyone outside that room would ever know it happened. It mattered because, for a few quiet minutes before dawn, the man everyone thought they understood saw himself plainly. Not as the richest, not as the loudest, not as the future, just as a tired soul waiting for someone to recognize him. And maybe, somewhere ahead of him, the woman who would become his peace would not find him in the headlines at all. Maybe she would find him in the silence after them. If you want more emotional, untold chapters behind Elon Musk, subscribe to Elon Musk, Untold Legacy, where we look past the myth and search for the man underneath.